All right, so guys, a very good evening to all of you. Uh, yeah, so just wanted to check the audio and video connection. Hopefully, audio and video is clear, right? Okay, so I hope we have done with the list methods in the last class, right? So yeah, okay. So I guess I was done with the list methods, right? Functions we have done, and a couple of methods of a list we have been working on. Let's say sorting a list and removing a list items, reverse search, insertion. Yeah, so these are the couple of methods we in generally use for list methods. Okay, there are some examples we have to just work on right now. This is again related to the list concept. Okay. Okay, so we will try to look at some of the examples related to the list. Okay, so what are the list methods having, and based on that list methods, we will try to figure it out some manual implementation. Okay, sometimes people will may expect, for example, there is something function called count, right? So it basically instead of using the predefined function, somebody or sometime they may expect you to write a predefined code, right? Okay, that's fine. We can directly use it. Or there are sometimes people will particularly ask about implement in a normal situation, normalized way. Okay. So in that case, the how we can probably proceed for that kind of the implementation. Okay. So this is a manual implementation. Okay, so we were trying to look at a count method. Okay, it means what is this count method in generally used in the last class? We have defined a list, and in that list, if any item is repeated for a more than one time, depends on that, the count will returns you that value. If not, it will returns you a zero. Okay, similarly, if you have a list, okay, let's say my underscore list is the list object. I'm just trying to figure some elements into it. Okay, let us make the list as a duplicate here. It means some items may repeated for a multiple times, correct? Right, this is my list object. Okay, if you just observe here, there are some items repeated in this list, right? Let's say this one is repeated, even this one is repeated, and even this is repeated. Same element as repeated for a multiple times. And similarly, this item is also repeated for a couple of times, right? Okay. So based on this, we need to find the count, manual implementation. Okay. So when we wanted to implement a manual, we require to understand. Okay, I'll try to figure it out. Some more examples here. Let us do one thing. We will try to figure it out. Okay. So let us make sure that first the way we'll try to understand functions in Python. I guess we have not come across with this topic, right? right? Python functions we have not come across earlier, right? Now let us make sure that, right? Let us make sure that we will try to understand first functions, okay? So how we can write a functions, okay? And what is the use of the functions in any programming language? It's not about Python, right? It's not about Python. It can be any programming language. Let's say C, we have C++, we have Java, or we have .NET, or whatever the programming language we have. Okay. In all of this particular programming languages, functions is one of the fundamental block, or fundamental thing to divide a program into multiple blocks. Okay. So how actually we define this function? Okay, basically a function is a group of statements, right? It's a group of related statements which performs a specific task in a program. Okay, we will try to have it just meaning of what you just need to understand here. Okay, all right, right. Hello, guys, is that audio is clear now? There is small deviation in the audio connection. I hope it is clear now. All right. So what is this particular function do us? A function will have a group of related statements, nothing but a similar type of a statements, or which can perform a specific task in a program. A specific task in a program, nothing but it just performs the specific kind of information in a program. Okay, so once we perform a specific information, what is the use of this? Okay, the very important thing we need to understand, okay, function is a value which help you to break our program into a smaller set of units or modules, right? It just basically trying to divide a very lengthy program into a smaller and a modular chunks. It means we can even that particular program is lengthy. If you divide that into a small sets or modules, then it can be easy to readability and maintenance, right? Very important for the most of the developer perspective. Okay, it means, like, for example, whenever you have a lengthy program and you wanted to divide that program into a small units, okay, and when after dividing that program into a small units, you can basically perform easy readability and easy maintenance, and all moreover it reduce the it's moreover reduce the duplication of the code, nothing but there will not be any same type of code is exist in your program. There'll not be any space same kind of thing. Okay, it means something like this. How do we write a program in Python is we use a def keyword, and then we use a function name, and that you can give any name. Okay, so then you pass the parameters list. Okay, and then you define a body of the function. Okay, and then you write a return statement to end up the function here, functional block. Okay, guys, everybody just observe this screen for 2 minutes. Just try to understand the points which I wrote over here. Yeah, so all right, so let us understand the definitions here. Okay, what are the words is involved over here? So first of all, we use a keyword, that is something called a def. Okay, that marks the start of the function, right? It basically start of that particular function will uses a def keyword. Okay, so in generally we don't require any other return statement. We can just use a function name. We can just use a function name, and that function name that can be identified uniquely in that given program. Okay, so it means that a function name should not be a duplicate. You can just use that name of the function within the given program that's supposed to be unique identifier. And parameters list will be what you can say, it's optional. It means to say that whenever you have a set of variables as an input for the function, we in generally call it as a parameters, right? That parameters is optional, whether you pass it or whether you doesn't pass it, that's fine. Okay, and then let us say body of the function, right? Body of the function defines the certain it defines a certain requirement, like what kind of requirements you have. Based on that, it will define it. And then we use a return keyword for the return some value, or you can just use for identification. Okay, so let us see, in this case we in general we will try to write some different functions over here. Okay, so I'll just remove this right now. By this time I'll remove this stuff. We'll try to complete every functional concept, and then after that we will move into the remaining aspect of it. Okay, now, so this is what a function. Let us see, we have several different type of functions also. It means sometimes a function is not have any parameters, and no return value. Okay, it means, for example, let us see this. I'm writing a function, let's say d app. Name of the function is test1. Let's say write a parenthesis. Okay, just use a colon symbol. It means to say that define the identity, let's say what you can call it as indentation, right? And then just write a return keyword. Okay, so this function is not taking any parameters and it's not return anything. Okay, so let's say I'm a function. So how do you call it? Once you execute the cell, I wanted to call this function, let's say test1, right? See that in this case of the function, what happened is this is not having any parameters here. Okay, now, and even the return statement, we just keep an empty, nothing but there is no value we are supplying to that. Okay, so that's the reason this particular statement or this simple example will tells you this function doesn't take any parameters and there is no return value for that function. Okay, and the other thing of the other side of the functions are, I'll try to give you one more example. Let's say some functions, right, takes the input argument or a parameter and no return value. Okay, it means, let's say test1 we are talking, we are expecting some input value. Let's say I'm expecting an input called x. I don't want it to return the value, right? Rather, I can just write here a square of the number, or let's say x cross x, which means a function taking an input parameter, not returning any value to this. Let's say 10. Let's say 100 will be the output for this. Okay, now is that clear? Guys, please observe this. I mean, there is a very important aspect for the functions in any programming language. In the programming concept comes compulsory, you need to understand, or you have to understand, the functional concept is a mandatory. I'll tell you who best developers to improve the programming languages. The best thing to improve the programming logics is to divide the program into subblocks. Okay, so when you are implement that program into a subblocks, when you are implementing that program into a subblocks, mostly you can increase the code reusability. Okay, so that's a thing you need to keep in mind always when you are writing a functional things. Okay, so guys, please look at this example. So we will try to come back with the other examples after that. Okay, so these are the two set of functions. Okay, there is another two sets of functions over here. Okay, so here the first one is not having any parameters, and second one is having a parameters. In the both the cases, the return statement is not carrying any value. The return statement we just keep empty for an identification for end of the function. Okay, now let us make a function. Let us make a function with a input parameter. Okay, let us do like this: without parameter and with return value. Nothing but a function is not going to take any value for the input aspect, and it have a return value for statement. Okay, let's say I'm writing a test2 which is not having any parameters. I wanted to return a value, let's say 100. Okay, you return anything. Yes, in this return statement you might return a integer, you might return a string, or you might return a float value that doesn't make any sense in the Python programming. Let's say everything will be considered as the on object. Okay, so let's say this is a string. Okay, so you just write a task3. So this is a look at here in these two examples. Both the examples are fine, but here we are trying to return integer of 100, and we are trying to return here in the terms of a string. It means it doesn't make any sense if you're writing an integer return type or you're writing a string return type. Both will be pointing of a same meaning. Okay, and similarly, if you just look at the last type of functions, let's say a function with input parameter and what you can say with a return statement also. Okay, so let's say a function called, let's say test4, taking an input parameter is something called x comma y, and just returns the value something called x cross y. Nothing but we wanted to return the multiplication of the input number. Let's say test4, we are writing, let's say 10 comma 25, so which is returns the value something called 250. Okay, so these are the another two sets of functions, guys. Mostly whenever you are writing a programs, or whenever you wanted to make sure that you wanted to write any programs, a functional block will makes you a very important task. Okay, so please keep that in mind, make a good practice of the functions topic. Okay, we'll try to give you an examples, but I don't know whether I mean, you guys are not responding to my questions, so that's the reason I'm not giving you to write a code. But in generally, what we do is when we have a start the functions, we give an assignment to write programs which is already discussed, but you guys are not responding at all. So I'm not gonna do that right now. Okay, fine. Just observe the another two sets of programs and let me know, do you have any questions over here? Okay, so I hope you have cleared with the other all the different type of functions topic, right? So let us make sure that we do write some examples on it so that you will get a clear idea about the even we have already discussed this certain examples, right? We have already discussed this example, but I wanted to convert that examples to a functional block. So in that case, how we can represent that, how we can write a program with the functional block. Okay, so that is what more important. That is what more important. As a developer, you required to write some requirement in a functional block. If you are able to write that in a functional block, and after that, whenever you have that same kind of requirement comes into your project, so what you have to do is unnecessary. You don't need to write a code again, the same code again. What in generally people looks for is they will look for a code which is already present. Okay, so that code we will try to look at right now. Okay, so now let us make sure that we'll write a very simple example. First of all, let's mostly you are will take this example, right? Write a function to print the even numbers between let's say two limits. Okay, two limits, we have to write a function. Okay, so the way writing a function is even numbers. Okay, so this is also follow same as the variables thing. Okay, right, it means the way when we are writing a variables, we used to write underscore symbol to divide two things. Okay, now so similarly, as when we wanted to write the same thing in a functional block, we actually look for the same of it. Okay, so on the top of it we have the function, and that function takes the two arguments. What is the first argument? Lower bound, and the second one is an upper bound, two bonds. And I just wanted to write a simple loop over here. Range of length, lower bound plus an upper bound, because upper bound is doesn't considered by a for loop. Let us make sure that write a plus one to it. So as what is the condition to be right here? If I is modular to divisible by 2 is equals to 0, let us print here itself by this time. We'll try to take one more example to return a value from the function. Let's say I'm done with the function right now, and let us use this function and passing an input parameter as, let's say, 10 comma 20. It just gives the output something called list of all even numbers between 1 to sorry, between the two limits. Might be a limit of lower and there might be a limit of upper. So what we have done over here in the function is you just write a function name. You write any name of the function, but write a proper name, a meaningful name to the function. Whenever somebody is trying to write a function, let us, let us not only you, even other person also need to work, because multiple peoples are working on the same project, so that they wanted to share your code also. So at that point of time, if you write a proper meaningful name, it's not only understand by you, it's also understand by the other person who is working as a code developer for you. So that's the reason, make sure to write like this. And whenever you wanted to write a function, please follow the same as the naming conventions for the variables. We just have it two limits over here. One is upper bound limit and the second one is lower bound limit. So I'm just placing that into a for loop, as we already come across this. Even upper bound is not considered in the for loop. Let's writing a plus one to it. It means you wanted to consider upper bound also, writing a simple condition to display the output for even numbers. Okay. Now I wanted to write one more example over here. Let's say write a function to print the odd number count between two limits. Okay, we just need to print a odd numbers between a two numbers, but here we are not expecting the numbers over here. Rather what we are expecting to write the count. Let's say we have a 10 numbers, write a count as 10. Let's say 20 numbers, write a count as 20, something like that. Let's say I'm writing a function name called odd underscore count numbers, odd count numbers, something like that. Okay, just required how many parameters? Lower bound and an upper bound. Just writing a function for I in the range of lower bound is the start value, upper bound is the second highest value, plus one to this, and then I can just write over here. First, I'm writing a count. Let's say, what is the count name? O odd underscore count. O underscore count. By default, I'm assigning to what? Let's say 0. If I is modular 2 is not equals to 0, then we can just say that O underscore count plus 1, right? And let's end of this. I wanted to return this function. Hope if you have any questions, I'm just asking you to just quickly let me know what is that. Okay, if you're not asking, I'm just moving forward that if you don't have any problems. Okay, so in this two functions, what actually you have to understand is the function which prints the output within the program, or I mean to say within the function which returns the value to the whenever you call it, the two things. Let us keep an eye on this. I'm just giving you a couple of minutes to observe this. Right, so guys, I hope is it clear? Is that any questions you have? Just let me know, because your future is all about depends on writing the programs into a functions, okay, or a methods. Okay, methods and function doesn't have any difference. The word terminology is differs. When you write a function, it used to write like this. When you write a function, you can write anytime, you can just call it like the way you're writing. But when you wanted to write a method is also same, but only the thing is you have to place that inside an object or inside a class. That's only the difference. You need just one thing. Whenever you are writing something called a function, it's independent. When you're writing a method, it's a dependent. That's it. All right, so let us moving forward on the same. Let us make sure that uh, write a function to display the digits of a number. In this case, what will happen? We are not returning the value, right? Uh, let's say I'm writing digits underscore display of number we are expecting an input. Let's say num. So we don't want it to write any written value for this function, right? Just writing a functional block over here. And within this functional block, let me write number is not equals to 0. First of all, but we can just write the same thing. And let's print r and just make if you wanted to write in the same line, you just write like this, and number should be double divisible by 10. It's the same thing. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we write a functional over here and then passing us some value called 1889 and just returns the value. See that we have seen the same program earlier also. There is no changes in the logic of a program, but the way of writing a program, the style of a program is be changed over here. Okay, now, so that is one thing you just need to keep in mind while dealing with the functions. The when you write a function block, or when you just write something called write a function where you just trying to do this. Okay, to make sure that the logic of that program is not going to change. The only thing is going to change is the matter of the code beautification, the code understandability, the code reusability will be get changed. Let me write another program. Okay, right? Display the count of even digits in the given program. So how do I write? Let's say even underscore digits underscore count. Okay, name of the function is this, and this input we are expecting something called number. Okay, and then let us make sure that I'm writing number is not equals to 0. Anyhow, we are explicitly we wanted to make it as 0. That's fine. So r is equals to number is modular divisible by 10, and then we are trying to initiate a condition over here. If it is equals to 0, we need to find some count, right? Let us make sure that before you start a loop, let us say even underscore count by default to 0. Okay, this is the global count, and then here if any digit is making that, and then I can just write a +1 to that. Whenever this condition is correct, I wanted to write a +1 to it, and just write number divisible by 10. Return value is supposed to be what? Even underscore count. Okay, so now let me just write a function and just pass the value to this, right? This will give you a digit. How many digits even here? Only 4 even digits. The output is 4. Okay, so the way of writing a program is changing, guys. The way of writing a program is changing, but the logic of a program is not changing. This is quite easy and quite useful also. But most of the people will have a problem writing this, correct? But it's not the difficult thing to do it. It's a very simple to think, very simple to do it. But the most of the people are failing to write a functionals properly. Okay, guys, just observe these two blocks. I don't know whether you're practicing or not. I'm just like helpless, right? If you are practicing, please take these two examples into consideration. Just observe this. I'll just give you some time over here. So, okay, so that's it. Basically, a concept of functions. Make sure that have a good practice. Okay, so I'm sure you will get very good knowledge on the programming. Okay, if you just do the practice more and more in the functional things. Okay, all right. So that's it, guys. I will see you tomorrow then. Bye. Take care.